Hello, everybody. My name is Steph. I am part of the Rex Cirrus8 training team, and I will be taking you through our budget webinar today. Before I get started on the actual budget itself, you will see I've just got a little screen showing at the moment from our Rex Real Trust team. If you are looking to get assistance with entering budgets and you want a little bit more information about the services that we provide, you should be able to use the QR code link that is displayed on the screen at the moment and then submit some details, and one of our team members from the Rex Real Trust team will be able to get in touch with you and give you a little bit of information about the services that they do provide around entering budget. So I'll leave that up for a little bit longer, and I will pop this back up at the end of the session as well. So anyone who doesn't catch it now, I'll pop it back up as we're finishing up actually entering the budget. So you can jump on and have a look at those services as well. And again, we'll upload that when we upload the video also. Okay, so I'll just give it another second in case anybody is wanting to jump on that QR code. Beautiful. All right, as I said, I will bring this back up again at the end of the session. So anyone who didn't have time to grab the information now, as I said, if you want to grab it at the end of the session, I'll pop it back up and we'll upload it into the knowledge base along with this video. Beautiful. So what we're going to be having a look at today is how we can enter our property budgets. Entering a budget can be completed by either a trust accountant user or a property manager user. But before we get started on entering the actual budget itself, I do want to take you through a couple of things that you may need to set up prior to beginning your entry of the budget. And these initial tasks will actually need to be completed by a trust accountant user. So the first thing that we're going to have a look at is how we can manage our property calendars if we are trying to enter a budget and we find that we do not have a calendar that exists on that property for the period that we are trying to enter this for. I'll show you how we can create those calendars and open them so they're available to you. The next thing I'll show you is how we create what we call a miscellaneous lease, which is like a dummy vacated lease. We recommend every property has one created against them for budgeting, but there are also other purposes that these can be used for, such as owner contributions. So I'll show you the process of creating that miscellaneous dummy vacated lease that we recommend having against every property. And once we've got those two items, we'll have a look at entering a new budget. I'll then show you how we can easily enter our budget for the next financial year based off of the last financial year's budget as well. And then we will go through how we can generate a budget report, which generally you may be wanting to send to your owner, and finishing up with then how we can send your tenants a letter in relation to the new budget that has just been created. So the first thing that we are going to have a look at, as I mentioned, is how we can manage our property calendars. And this is a task that can only be completed by a trust accountant user. So if you are a property manager user who is needing to enter the budget and you find that you do not have a calendar to go and enter it into, you'll just need to request that one of the trust accountant users goes and creates this for you. So the way that we create our additional property calendars is done through the configuration tab. And on the left-hand side menu, we've got manage calendar. So this is bringing us into our master calendar here. And again, assuming that we are working off a financial year calendar, that's the calendar that I'm going to leave as my default here. And this section here to generate new periods is what we will need to set up first before we can actually open those calendars on the property. So you'll see here, this gives me the option to generate 12 additional master calendar periods. Right now, I do have my periods open for the 2027 financial year already. So it's telling me here that the next period that I would be creating would be for the 2028 financial year. So I'm going to create it anyway, just to show you how that works. And all I need to do here is click the create button. And that will now give me a new financial year calendar with those 12 periods. Now that that calendar exists, I can go and open it on my properties so that I can start entering budgets for that financial year. So to do that, I just need to come down to this period section here. I need to select the relevant period. So we can just start with period 1 for the relevant financial year that we need to open this up for. And because I do already have 2027, I will go straight to the 2028 financial year calendars. But again, if you're working just onto the next financial year, that's all you'll be needing to select here. So all I need to do is select period 1 of the financial year calendars that we need to create. And you'll see here, it then gives me a list of all of my properties in the database. And if I just want to create this right now in bulk for every property so that I'm not having to come in and do it individually when I go and go and enter budgets, I can just do that from here where it says extend calendars. I can select this for all of my properties. It's going to put a tick box on everything for me. And if I scroll to the bottom of this page here, I can now say create calendar for selected year. And that's going to open this up for me. So I would actually now be able to start entering budgets even for the 2028 financial year because that's been created on all of my properties. So that's the first area to go and make sure you have the setup on that already, because otherwise when you go to start entering the budget, if that year that you're needing to enter isn't showing, you're going to need to come back in here and you're going to need to create that. The next task to do, if you haven't got it already, prior to actually entering the property budget, is creating the miscellaneous lease. And for the budgeting purposes, typically we tend to use this for perhaps you've got a vacancy in a multi-tenanted property and you're needing to allocate whatever portion of the expenses that would be going to that vacant unit. You can allocate them to the miscellaneous lease. So basically the owner can pick those ones up because they have to pay towards that portion for that vacancy. Okay. Again, creating the miscellaneous lease itself is a task that also needs to be completed by a trust accountant user. And that's as simple as going into the Leases tab here. In Manage Lease, all you'll do is select a new lease and choose the property that you're entering this against. So the property I'm actually going to be putting entering my budget on today is this one here, 88 Davenport Road, and I don't already have a miscellaneous lease on this property. So if I go to start entering in my budget, I won't have a miscellaneous lease showing, which I could be needing. So picking up the property that we're adding this to create this MISC lease, all we need to do is give it a lease code, and we're just going to call it MISC. And again, we can actually have this same code on every property that we create this for. This falls out of the coding rules that we have where this has to be unique. We can use a MISC lease and same code on every single property. Once I've entered the lease code in here, clicking the little arrow icon next to that is going to open up the rest of the details for me here. And all we would need to do here is in my lease name, I'm just going to write MISC again. Same for my tenancy location. I don't change anything else here. I just come down to my tenant details and associated company. And instead of creating a new company here and getting a new debtor, I'm going to select it from my existing list. And this is where I'm going to pick up my miscellaneous company, which you will have in your database already. That is all I need to enter. I don't want to enter any additional details of the lease here. So what I do to now save this so that we can have this existing in that sort of dummy vacant state is just click the green tick in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. And that's now going to save this. It's going to be classed as a vacated lease. And now we can use this for entering our budgets or, again, a range of different reasons for why we may have our miscellaneous leases in there. So those are the two parts of this session that are trust accountant only tasks. A property manager user can't do either of those tasks. So again, if you are the property manager user who is going to be entering the budget, please make sure that if these are fields that you need, you request that a trust accountant user go and enter these details for you. Moving into entering the budget itself, again, as either a trust accountant or a property manager user, I'm able to find this through the Properties tab, and it sits here in the Operational Property Budget. You will notice when you come to this tab, there's two versions of budgets that you can enter. We have our version 1 and our version 2. The version 1 is the original version of the budgets that we used to use sort of exclusively. At this point, a version 1 budget, or using a version 1 budget, would only be recommended if it is a single tenanted property. Version 1s don't handle multi-tenanted properties very well. And having said that, we also typically would now suggest that everybody actually use a version 2 budget, whether it is for a single tenanted property or for a multi-tenanted property, because this is the most recently developed version. It is the version that will continue to receive improvements. And the other reason for entering any type of budget as a version 2 instead of version 1 now is it also actually stores that information then in this overview section. So at any point, you can come in and you can see in here, if you have a budget entered, you can check on which financial year, and you can see the details of every property that does have a budget entered, and you get a fair bit of information from this screen here. Anything that is entered into version 1 does not also get held in this overview screen. When I take you through entering the budget today, I'm only going to be doing it in the version 2. As I said, this is the version that we recommend using now. Anyone who's already using version 1 and is used to it, and it's a single tenanted property, it's up to you if you want to continue this way. But if you are just learning how to use budgets and this is your first time entering these, I would say stick to version 2. Once we have selected which version we are going to be entering, the next thing that we're going to do is select the property that we are entering the budget for. So I'm going to use that 88 Davenport Road property that I had just picked up. And this is my overview page here. So once I've selected the property, I then will select the relevant input type. So what type of budget am I actually entering against this property? Is it that I want to put this as a cash budget, cash forecast, accruals, or an accruals forecast? Now, when you do complete your budget information entry and you do go to lock the budget, you do actually get the option to copy it over to all of these options for the types of budgets that you can put in here. So you can enter it as cash, you can enter it as accruals, and again, when you go to lock the budget, you then get the option to copy it over to the other versions as well. The next thing we're going to do is select the financial year that we are entering the budget for. So being March this year of 2026, the budget that I'm entering now, I'm going to be doing for my 2027 financial year. And again, if it doesn't show in this list as an available option for you to enter, it means that that calendar hasn't yet been created on the property for that financial year. So you'd have to go back into configuration to add that in. The next section here is the unit start date. This is the date that the system's going to look at as basically when your tenants are occupying this property, and this is when we are loading our charges or we are looking to allocate our expenses to our tenants. If they aren't showing as occupying a unit in the property as at this date, they are not going to appear for us to allocate expenses to or for us to import their income for and calculate VO charges against. So it's going to assume when you are entering this that the unit start date will be at the start of the new financial year, so 1st of July 2026 for my 2027 financial year. But if you already know at this point when you are entering your budget that you've got a tenant who isn't moving in to this property or won't be taking occupation until maybe September of that year or whenever later in the year, but you need them to be included as part of this budget, you can actually future date this unit start date to make sure that they also get pulled through as well as all your other already occupying tenants. So if I need to future date this, again, assuming I've got a tenant who's moving in maybe even in the middle of September, in that case, I would change my unit start date to the 1st of October. That's still going to include all of my other tenants who were already occupying the property at the start of the financial year, but now it's also going to make sure that it includes the tenant who doesn't take occupation until September. So we can include them, we can allocate expenses, and we can import their income as well. Okay. So just really important, if someone's not showing, check the unit start date. I'll leave this one back as July here. The next section is going to show us our management fee details. So this is how our management fee is currently set up on the property that we have selected. It tells me which account this is coded to. So again, I can see here being a 5671 management fee expense account code. That tells me here that my management fee is going to be factored in as part of the budget on this property. It will tell me, it'll ask what my VO account code is, and the default on that one just being our standard variable outgoing income account code, that 2301. And my miscellaneous VO account code is also defaulting to a 2305, which I can see would be the owner contribution towards that. And again, typically that's going to be if I've allocated funds to a miscellaneous lease, just be towards owner contributions. It then shows me my method for how I calculate my management fee. So I've already said that it's part of a VO expense, and it tells me here that my method is based on a percentage of total receipt, and that is at 3% excluding GST. If that doesn't look right, you would need to go and change your management fee method on the property itself to update the details for the budget. The next section here is asking us if we want to pull through figures to help us with entering our expenses in here and being able to, pull through the expenses that we already have on this property. Because I'm entering a budget on this property for the first time, none of this is going to necessarily be too relevant to me. But if I was entering a budget for my 2027 financial year, and I did have a previous budget on this same property for the 2026 financial year, this field can help us assist with budgeting sort of our remaining period, because I'm entering this in March for the 2027 financial year. So again, at this stage, because it's brand new, it's not going to be all that relevant. But what this allows us to do is it will pull through actual figures from July of 2025, and then we can set to which date we want it to look at our expenses up to. So if I'm entering it in March, maybe I want it to look at expenses all the way up to February as well. Then I've got two options for the method that it will use to help calculate the remainder of this period and the expenses that we're entering in here. I've got two options with that. The first option is to budget for the remaining period. What this option is going to do is it's going to look at our actual figures, so the transactions that have occurred in this period. And again, if we have a budget that has been entered on this property for the previous financial year, it's also going to take whatever we've submitted in there, and it's going to help pull through that to give us an estimate for the remaining period as well. If this is the option that I'm going to be using, I then select how I want my remaining period budget to be, whether it's cash or cash forecast. My other method option here would be to average the actuals instead. So if I don't have a previous budget in for the last financial year, but I do still want the system to assist with budgeting for the remaining period for the 2026 financial year, I can select to average actuals. That's going to look at my actual expenses, and it's going to look at it from July to February. It's going to then take that figure. It's going to divide it by, what's that, I think 10 months. Divide it by the number of months that we're looking at here, and then times that figure by 12 to help us then estimate the remainder of this financial year. Again, this being a new budget, potentially even a new property, I might not have all that much data on this, so neither of these fields might be all that relevant right now for me. But again, it does help for your future budget data entry. The last section here before we actually load the budget and start entering our expenses is the option to increase our variable outgoing receipt by the calculated management fee. In this case, I'm going to remove that one, and I'm going to calculate my management fee into this one myself using a method in the system that'll help me calculate that one. So I'm going to untick it. I'm not going to increase by my management fee. Once I've got all of this set up here, I can go load budget. And again, because this is the first time I'm entering a budget against this property, I get this little pop-up here saying there is no budget set up from last year, so I'm entering this as new. That's fine, so I can just close that, and now you'll see that it has broken down the budget that we are entering into these 5 steps. So the budget settings was that overview that we've just been through. It's now taking us to enter our expenses. We'll then enter our income. We have the option to have the system calculate our management fee for us, or if that's not required, you do not need to use step 4. You can skip straight through that and go to step 5 once we've entered our expenses and our income, and that's where we're going to look over the budget and we are going to lock it once we're happy with that. But the first thing that we need to do here is start entering our expenses. So from here, there's a few options, apologies, for how we can start entering the expenses that we expect on this property for this financial year. We can either do a quick add of account codes here just by searching for the relevant account code that we are wanting to enter as an expense. Or if I go add accounts here, it's going to give me that in that sort of table view where I can look at these in bulk and I can push across the options that I want to select in a bit of a bulk format here. So it's going to show us all of our available account code options. First thing it's showing me here are my owner expenses, but again, I'm entering a budget here, so I probably don't want to enter anything as an owner expense. I can drop that field down, and that would then just take me straight through to looking at my variable outgoing expense account codes. And these are probably the ones that I'm wanting to select here. So making sure when we're entering our expenses that they are on a VO expense account code. Now from here, I could just scroll through this list, clicking on the options that I want to select, and that's going to push them over into my selected box on the right-hand side. And that's the account codes that I'm going to be importing and using as part of the budget. If I'm looking for specific account codes, I can use my search filter up the top here. So if maybe I want to enter a water rates, once I start typing that in the search bar here, it's going to show me all of my water account codes. So I can go water rates here. I'll quickly add 1 or 2 more. I'll just do one for cleaning as well. Whoops. There we go, not owner expense, outgoings. There we go. Okay, so these are the account codes that I'm going to select as part of my budget. Once I've got them all, I just go add account. Now that I've got them selected here, it gives me a breakdown of each account code. I can see I've got this little red sort of notification over here that this is unsaved. So right now, until I go and enter all of the required fields for these expenses, it's not going to be saving this for me. I need to go and enter my figure, and I need to allocate that through to my tenants in this property as well before it will save, and then I can move over to my income portion. Again, here it'll give us the account that we've just selected and the account name. It'll show us last year's budget as well if we have any figures in here, and it will then give us our actual figures from there as well, or our estimate of actuals, again, based on what we've selected in the overview. If there is a variance on those figures, it will show here, and a variance percentage. And here is where we're going to start entering in the details for the 2026 to 2027 financial year. And we're going to do that by clicking this little pencil icon here to start entering the details of this expense account code. The first thing that it takes us to here is where we're going to enter the budget figure. You do have the option, if this is coming through as $0 like mine is here, because again, this is a new property I'm taking over, maybe I didn't have the figures, I haven't entered any expenses on this yet. If you do know them, but they just haven't pulled through because they haven't been reflected through your Rex Cirrus8 database, you can still put in the estimated actuals for your 2025-2026 budget in here, or you can leave it blank and we can just work off the budget that we want to set for the 2026-2027 financial year. So this first one here being council rates, let's say we're estimating about 6,000 for this one. Okay. You've also got this little comment box over to the right-hand side as well. So if there are any comments that you want to leave in here, you can enter that. And anything that you put in here this year can also pull through into next year's budget as well. So if there is anything that you want to leave in here, you can add it in. I'm just going to put in something for now. Okay, so once we've got our expense in, the next part that we need to do, which we really recommend you make sure that you are going through each of these 3 tabs and not just saving it at this point when you've put the budget figure in, because we need to actually enter in our monthly breakdown on this and our unit breakdown so that we can allocate our expenses to our tenants. The monthly breakdown section here is going to break down what you've put as that annual figure for my 2027 financial year budget. And the default on this is that it's going to split this evenly across the 12 months of the year. Please make sure that you review this section and you're actually changing your split type to give the most accurate information for when you expect to pay these expenses. Because if we are just leaving every expense broken down as a monthly figure, but for things like council rates or water rates or land tax, where they're not broken down into a monthly amount and it's actually quarterly or semi-annually or even annually, or you can just set up your own custom amount. If we leave it as monthly, it's going to assume that we are paying every single month this portion of council rates, which is generally not the case. What this field impacts is when you are in your general ledger reporting and your profit and loss report in there, if you've just left this split as monthly, and it is again something like council rates where you don't pay towards it every month, you're always going to end up with a variance showing in there. The other reason this is important is if you send your owners the long report, and again, because you've estimated in your budget that you're going to be paying towards this expense every month at this figure, when that doesn't happen, that's also going to be reported as a variance on the long report to the owners. Okay. And again, if we enter this accurately based on when we expect the expense, this is going to help us even further for next year's budget, when we can just copy over what we've got in here. And when we are doing budget remaining period in that overview page, if we know that we've said that we've got our council rates in and we expect that their start period on that one is going to be, as of 1st of July 2026 here. My last installment here coming in at the 1st of April 2027, if I'm only budgeting if I'm using budget remaining period only up until February, this hasn't been accounted for yet. Whereas if I've got it entered in here, it's going to help form part of the rest of that calculation to budget my remaining period when I then go and enter in my 2028 budget. Okay. So please try and keep this field as accurate as you can. It's going to really help you, and it's going to help with the way that this is reported for you as well. Okay. Now, again, your options for this are either leaving it as monthly or bi-monthly, quarterly, half yearly, yearly, or you can set up a custom range for when you expect this expense to occur. Again, if I've gone quarterly here, what's the start month on that? So whether I expect that to start 1st of July, 1st of August, 1st of September, and then that's my period in here. The last section that you definitely want to make sure that you are reviewing is the unit breakdown, because this is where we start allocating those expenses towards our tenants. And in this case, this is a multi-tenanted property that I'm entering this against, but it's going to be pretty much the same whether it's multi-tenanted or single-tenanted. So we just need to make sure that we've got the correct allocation for this. From here, it shows me all of the tenants that I have in this property. So I've got 2 tenants currently occupying the property. I have 1 vacancy, and this is now where that miscellaneous lease that we just went and created is showing. And I can now use this as a way to allocate expenses that may not apply to my 2 active tenants, or if I need to, again, allocate that allocate the vacancy over to that miscellaneous lease. When we are setting up the unit breakdown, the default allocation type for this is always just going to go by net lettable area. It's probably the most common way that expenses are split over these multi-tenanted properties. But if that is not the case, you can override the allocation type from here as well. So rather than going by net lettable area, this is where I could select my option to still go by net lettable area, but like in this case here where I do have a vacancy, I want to allocate the portion from that vacant unit to the miscellaneous lease instead. Otherwise, I can input a custom amount myself. So if it is not going to be based on net lettable area or a percentage figure, and I just have a custom amount that I would be allocating towards each tenant from this expense, I can enter that. The important thing with this is if we are going to be entering a custom percentage, is that we make sure, or a custom amount, we make sure that our total percentage figure always tallies back up to 100%. Otherwise, we're going to get an error. It's not going to like it. If I'm on input custom amount, I can come in and change it in here. So the percentage or the cost. My other option is inputting a custom percentage. So that allows me to override this percentage field here. So again, if this is what I'm using, I just need to make sure that my total percentage figure comes up to 100% here. Or I can do the allocation by number of car bays. So it also shows that information here. This tenant has 2 car bays, so I can select my allocation, go by that instead. I'm going to put this one as net lettable area, and I'm going to assign my vacant unit over to the miscellaneous lease. I've also got other options in here as well. So if, again, I had some sort of custom method for calculating how this expense needs to be reflected, and maybe this tenant here at Unit 1, I'm not going to be apportioning any of this expense itself to this tenant, I've got the option here to then allocate their portion to the miscellaneous lease instead. And I can even set that up as its own custom percentage amount as well. So whether it's 100% of this charge goes there, or whether we have some agreement where this tenant only pays maybe 50% of this expense this specific expense, and the rest of it then gets picked up by the owner via the miscellaneous lease. Okay. I'm going to untick that one though, and we're going to keep that here. Once you've got all of that in, so you've done your expenses, you've confirmed your monthly breakdown, and you've confirmed your unit breakdown, that's when we can then go and save this. Having a look now at the way that this expense shows on this page, instead of having my little red unsaved icon here, I now have a green tick. This has been saved for me. So if I was to move over to any of my other tabs, come back to the expenses, only this council rate is going to be saved. Okay. So again, just making sure that I then do the same things. We'll quickly just pop in some figures for land tax here. Say 5,000. Monthly breakdown on this. We only get our land tax in once a year, and I'm anticipating that as of February next year. Okay. My unit breakdown, again, I still have that vacancy in there, so I'm going to change my allocation from net lettable area, and I'm going to allocate my vacancy over to my miscellaneous lease, save that, and then again, just continue with the remainder of my expenses. You'll notice here the council rates up the top. My little comment box has gone green. That's because I added a comment in here, whereas the land tax, I didn't put anything, so that remains grey as well. So again, just a quick indication for you to let you know if there is something that you may want to go and review. What have we got for this one? Water rates. Again, monthly breakdown on this one. I will do with quarterly, and we expect that starting as of August. Unit breakdown, allocating my vacancy to the MISC. And then my last one being cleaning. Let's go with 2,000. Monthly breakdown, I'm actually going to leave this one as monthly. We're going to assume that this is a monthly invoice we receive and pay. So then it's just going to be the unit breakdown itself. And again, I'm going to allocate that to my miscellaneous. Once I have all of those saved in here, as soon as I've got the required information, it's automatically going to save. So I don't have to click anything to save this. I can now just move over to my next step, which is my income. From here, to load our income, we're going to use this tools function here. And the first thing we're going to do is say load charges. And then, yes, we are sure. What this is doing, and sorry, I'll just minimize the screen a little bit so you get the whole page view. When I load these charges in, this is going to pull through everything that I currently have listed as a lease charge against all of my tenants that occupy this property here. It's going to tell me which account code these ones are on. So these are my rents. There was a rent abatement in here. Only one of my tenants currently actually has a lease charge for variable outgoings. And again, if something isn't pulling through here, this is when you would need to, back in your budget, set up that overview page, review the unit start date, because if someone's expenses are not pulling through, it's because it hasn't recognised that they start until a future dated period. So you might need to go and push that date out. You'll also notice along the income lines here, it's going to give you a breakdown of these charges as a monthly amount. And some of these have this little flag in here, which is indicating that there's going to be a change to that charge. And if you hover over it, it's going to tell you what that actually is. So in this case, that top one here for my dive swim school, we have a CPI rent review listed against this one that's due to occur in October of 2026. My cafe, if I hover over that one, this one has a 2% rent increase. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit easier here. But you'll notice that when we have those percentage increases that are built directly into the charge, so it's automatically going to be increasing the charge for us, you'll see that it actually automatically increases that for us in this income section as well. Okay. With the CPI, because we don't know what that figure is yet, we are not sure what the new income is going to be as at that date. It can't pre-fill anything in here for us. But if you do want to override the income yourself, you can. And you can do that just by selecting the first period that you want to update the information for. And if I change that from 10,000, let's say 1,100 instead. Once I put this amount in here, I can either leave it as an individual increase for that period if I know that there is something occurring in that 1 month that could increase this, or I can use these tools that show at the top here to either copy this amount to the remaining periods, meaning if I click that, it's going to change every remaining period here to now be at the same rate as this one. Or I've got the option to split this amount over the remaining periods. So rather than being the same figure for every month for the remaining period, it's going to take that figure and then it's going to divide it evenly over those remaining periods. Okay, so if you do need to update those, that's what you can do. So sorry for zooming in and out. It's just whether the page view is there or not. We'll zoom out again so that we can see that as a whole view. I'm going to just change that one back to what it was before. Sorry. So as I already mentioned, only one of my tenants is actually currently showing as having a variable outgoing lease charge set up against them. But what I can do from what I've just entered into my expenses is I can actually now use the system to calculate the VO income for my other tenant as well. And I can do that again using this tools function here and say calculate VO income. And if I want to proceed, say yes. This is now going to update the VO income that I already had listed against the previous tenant. It's now included a VO income amount to my tenant who didn't previously have one. And I do also have that amount showing against the miscellaneous lease as well. Okay, so loading that is looking at what we just put into those expenses, the way that we split those expenses across these tenants, and that's now updating our expected VO income from these tenants. If we are happy with that and what we have, so what this is now calculated to, we can now just save this income as well and then close. That lets us know that this has been saved. The next section here is for our management fees. Now, you might not need to use this at all. So if management fees are not something that you calculate in as part of your yearly budget, you can skip this step entirely. Or if you already did your calculation on your management fee and you entered that as an expense already in step 2 here with the expenses, you don't need to do this field as well. But this will allow us to let your Rex Cirrus8 database do the management fee calculation for you based on what you've already entered in here, your expected income, and then it's able to calculate it, and we can then go and factor that back into the budget for ourselves as well. So before I apply that management fee, I can see here it gives me a breakdown of what my expected management fee is in this property. And again, it then shows me the allocation of that to each of the tenants. And like I did in the expenses, if I need to change the allocation type, again, it's going by net lettable area as the default here, but I might want to change this to allocate my vacant to the miscellaneous lease again. Once I'm happy with that, if I now go apply management fees and then say yes, if I go back into my expenses, I now have a management fee line here as well that's now been included. It's brought my 2027 budget figure up to this amount in my expenses, and it will have already increased my VO income portion as well by what we've just added into that management fee. Again, if you don't need to because you already did that when you entered the expenses originally, or your management fee is not calculated into your budget, you can skip that step entirely. Once we've done that, that actually brings us to the last step, almost last step of entering the budget, which is the overview itself. And the most important part to check with this is that our income and our expense figures match here. So this shows me what I have calculated as my VO income and the total figure for that in here. And this is what I've calculated as my total expenses, and that's my total figure here, and those match. So I'm pretty comfortable that I have allocated all of those expenses correctly as required. Again, if those figures don't match, just make sure you go and review your expenses. Maybe the unit breakdown hasn't been entered correctly. Maybe you haven't loaded your VO income in the third step of entering the income. So just quickly go back and review those sections. Once we're happy with that though, I've now entered everything that I need in here. I can now lock the budget. If I go to lock the budget, it's going to ask if I'm sure. And if I say yes, it's going to open up this field for me here. This is where I mentioned as a default, it's automatically going to select to copy this cash budget that I'm entering into a cash forecast and an accruals forecast budget as well. So unless you need to untick that, you can leave that as it is, and then you're able to generate any of those as a budget report on this property. But if you do want to untick it, you can. You've also got the option to leave a comment in here as well. So if there is anything that you want to note, maybe even just your initials to sign off saying that you're the one who has entered the budget and approved it, you can put that in, but it's not a required field. You don't have to add a comment in here. Once I'm happy with that, I can just say yes, lock the budget. So that's now locked, which means if I go back into my expenses or my income, I can't change anything. But if I do need to, maybe I have entered something wrong, I've missed something, I want to come back and I need to make changes, I can always unlock the budget as well, go and make my updates and then come back and lock it again. And it's also going to then show that in this log so you can see who's been in locking or unlocking the budget if you need to check this. Now that my budget is locked, I actually get an additional step in here, which is my lease charges. And if I go into this final step, it shows me my 2 tenants that I had in this property. And from here, it tells me what we have now calculated my VO income to each of these tenants to be. And directly from here, it will allow me to update their lease charge as well. So the first one showing here is my tenant who originally didn't have a VO or variable outgoings lease charge created at all. So the charge amount for that is 0. And this is what it's now calculating the budget amount to be, sorry. I can change the charge type, so it's just defaulting to rent. I can just change that to outgoings. Leave my charge frequency as monthly or however you charge your outgoings. And then from here, I can just go add, and that's actually going to create a new lease charge for me for this tenant, starting as of the 1st of July 2026. My other tenant did already have an outgoings charge on there. It was actually higher than what I've got in here. So obviously I've probably not included enough expenses in here. So I can still change the charge for this one, but it is going to be reducing it. I can do this individually by going add or update, or I can use the tick box up the top here if I was just updating them both, or if this was more than the 2 tenants, I can use the tick box, pick everybody up, and then say update selected lease charges. And then yes, if I'm sure, that's now been saved. So if I was to go and have a look at, let's say, a Davenport Cafe lease here. And property 88. And Davenport Cafe. If I jump to my lease charges now and I have a look at my variable outgoings, if I open to view this, it's going to show me my charge periods now to say that from 1st of the 1st, 2026 to the 30th of the 6th, 2026, our VO lease charge was at $20,000, but now based on what we just entered into the budget, as of the 1st of the 7th, 2026, up until end of time when we go and enter in our next budget, we are now going to be charging at this amount annually instead. This is also available as the property manager uses as well. So you don't have to be a trust accountant user to use this step 6 of the lease charges in your budget. If you're entering this as the property manager, you still have the ability to do this as well. So you don't need trust accountant access to make any change, to actually add these in or to update the lease charges. So that is entering the budget from scratch, having no budget in for the previous period. Before we move over to the budget reports and sending your tenants budget letters as well, I will quickly show you the difference between entering in a brand new budget like we are here and loading a budget from a previous period into this year to assist us with then entering these figures and how easy that can actually be. So jumping back into the operational property budget again, picking up the property that I now want to enter my 2027 budget for, and I've got one here. All right, one. Hopefully, let's see. I think this is one that has a previous budget on it. Let's see. Picking up this property first and then choosing the financial year that we are entering the budget for. So again, I'm going to go with 2027 here now. My unit start date, I'm going to leave it. I don't think I have any tenants moving in future dated at this stage, so I'm just going to leave it as 1st of the 7th, 2026. Again, this shows my management fee information here. I can now choose how I want the system to help me estimate the remaining period of this budget. And again, from what period to when. Let's go again to February. And this is where, if I have entered my budget for the previous financial year, this can really help with budgeting for the remainder of this period and where I may want to use this option here to budget the remaining period over averaging the actuals. Okay. So I'm going to leave it as that. I'm going to untick increasing my receipts again, and then I'm going to go load budget. Once I've done that, it's going to show me this is the budget that was entered for the 2026 financial year. And if I just am keeping this pretty much the same, I just need to slightly increase my expenses. I can just go and import all these account codes, say yes, and that's now pre-filled the information for me here. It's showing me what my budget was in that 2025-2026 financial year. It gives me the estimate of the actuals and if I had variances showing in here. And then it's going to already predetermine a figure for the 2026 to 2027 financial year based on this estimate of actuals. Okay. If this isn't the same figure that you want to use, you can always go in and override this. You can still do that at the individual level by going in and editing each of these account codes and increasing that manually by a set amount. Or we can do this in bulk by using the tick box tools over here to select all of these account codes, or we can select individual account codes, individual account codes that we might want to do this for. And once we've used these tick boxes, we then get these 2 additional fields up here. We've got the option to adjust the amount. If I click on that, this actually lets me set up an increase based on either a percentage or an amount figure, and then I can just apply that across each of these expenses in here. So if I need to just increase each expense maybe by 10%, I can pop that in as my percentage figure and then apply, and yes, and that's now going to increase my 2026-2027 financial year budget figure for my expenses. The other thing that I can do with these bulk allocation tools as well is I can also change the allocation type at a bulk level. So this is when we are looking at splitting our unit charges here. If something has changed with the way that we were splitting those expenses from the previous budget that we entered to the budget that we're entering for 2027, we can again change that in bulk as well. So this might be, again, that last year you did have it set to split the cost based on net lettable area, but within this new financial year, maybe you do have a vacancy, it's been vacant for a while, and instead of splitting all of them by net lettable area like you could last year, you might now have that vacancy in there and you might just want to allocate all of the, still split it by net lettable area, but allocate your vacancy to the miscellaneous lease for this financial year instead. So I can do that from here and then set that up as required. Okay. Again, I do still need to go into each of the account codes, even though I have done that bulk update tool here, just to confirm the settings in there. So my amount is in here. Again, I would want to check that my monthly breakdown is still accurate, or if I had accidentally just left it as monthly in the last financial year, sorry, and I was finding that I was getting all of those variances every time I was running those reports, this would again be a good opportunity to come in, check that that monthly breakdown has been set up as I need it, and again, just review my unit breakdown in here as well. Okay, again, once I'm happy with that, save that. That now goes green. And again, we just continue to do this as per, as we've just done with entering our new budget as well. Okay, so not much changes with that. I won't go through that again, setting any more of this up because the rest of the process is exactly the same. We would still load our income. We would still calculate our VO on that one. Management fee has already been factored in here, so I wouldn't do that again. So then it would just be as simple as going in and reviewing and locking the budget. So that's the actual budget entry itself. The next couple of sections I'm going to show you before we finish up the session for today is how we can generate a budget report. And this, again, might be something that you're going to be sending to your owner. You can generate your budget report, again, as a trust accountant or as a property manager user, staying in the properties tab here and going into property budget report. You can choose to select by a portfolio or by the individual property. And if I want to use that, go with that 88 Davenport that we just entered that against. Once I've picked up my property, I select the budget that we are reporting. So I've only got my 2027 budget showing in here to select from, but if I did have previous, I can pick those up as well. What report type I want this to be, so whether it's the cash forecast, the accruals, or the accruals forecast. And again, because I entered that budget as cash, but I copied it over to all of those other options as well, this is why I can select them, any of those from here as well. The report file, whether I want to generate this as an Excel spreadsheet or whether I want to generate this as a PDF file. I'm going to leave it as Excel because that gives us a lot more information that we can get from the report as well. In the advanced options, I can choose what type of reports I want to be included in what we're generating here. So if I want the full expense budget included, the monthly budget there as a default, but I can tick or untick that, variable outgoings, monthly budget per lease, and if I also want to include a breakdown budget per lease as well. Once I tick that, I do get some additional options that I can select. So for the tenant details, do I want this to show at the square meter rate? Do I want it to show as the percentage rate? Or do I want it to show it as both in this report? Use formulas, yes or no. This is, if you say yes on this, it actually allows you to edit the report that you generate. So your fields become editable in there. Whereas if I say no, it means that it is just locked down as the report that generates and I can't go and edit or override any figures from in there. The last section here It's a little bit optional, but your color scheme. So if you want to set a specific color scheme, whether it's to suit, your own branding, or even if it's your owner's preferred color and you want to kind of customize the report for them a little bit, you do have a few options for what kind of color scheme you want to generate that in. So I like green. I might go with a blue-green color scheme for this one, and then generate report. And up the top of my page here is where I get the download of my Excel spreadsheet. So opening that one up. There we go. This is an example of what my budget report looks like. So I've got my expense budget. It's going to give me a breakdown of each of those expense account codes that I've put in, and the same details, sort of like it's showed in the expense screen itself. Shows me that monthly budget. It gives me the individual tenants. So I've got my 2 tenants that occupy the property. I've got my vacant unit in there as well. And then I've got what's allocated to the miscellaneous. And then I have my operating expenses. And the last field here is that breakdown per lease. Okay. So again, you can then go and provide that to your owner. Potentially, you might want to generate this report and provide it to the owner before you even lock the budget. So that option is there for you to do as well. Once you've locked the budget, before you go and update the lease charges. Yeah, that's the report that you can generate there. So you can go and generate that for any financial year at any time, as long as you've got a budget against it. The last topic that we are going to cover before I wrap up the session today is also how we can then send our tenants a budget letter as well from what we've just created. So the way that we can send these, and we can do these in bulk, is through the Companies tab. In the Send Email and Letters, from here, we're going to select our method for what type of letter we are going to be sending. And in this case, I'm going to be using budget as my option. I can choose to send this by an individual contact type, or I can just pick up the lease and whatever I have set up in there as people receiving communications, who's going to get this letter. I can filter this by my portfolio if I want to see only my active properties in here. Then I will select either the individual property that I want to set this up for, or again, just I can select the whole portfolio at a time by pushing everyone across, or I can select this for the individual properties that I have know that I have a budget against. So I'm just going to do that 88 Davenport Road. Once I've picked my properties and I've pushed them over in the selection box here, I then say select. That then filters to show me my active tenants in there as well. So again, I can then just push them across. Selecting the letter template. Now, hopefully you do already have a standard budget letter template in your database. If you don't have a budget letter template already set up in your database, please just get in contact with our support team and request that we put that in for you. And then you can just use that same template every year, just updating the dates as required in the main template itself, because it pulls through all of the information and it gives them a breakdown of the budget figures from the template that we provide for you. So if you don't have it, you can contact our support team at support@cirrus8.com.au. But if you do have it, just pick up your template from in here. Selecting which type of budget this has been entered as. So again, I'm just going to leave this one as my cash budget, and for which year. And again, using just this property, it's only showing me the 2027 because that's the only budget that I have in here. I've got the option then to show the annual property budget. So yes or no on this. I'm going to leave it as yes. And again, in the tenant details, For the letter that I'm about to provide to them, I can show their breakdown as that per square metre, or I can show it as a percentage figure instead, or I can show it as both or none. I'm going to do both so that it gives the most information. From here, just like any other letter that you would be sending or generating in bulk through the system, we do have the additional placeholders here. If you want to customize any information at this point, add any additional details, you can pick up any of your required placeholders from this list here just by copying them and pasting them into your content. Otherwise, if you're just using the template as it is, we can leave it. From here we go. This is one I already need to update. So this is still showing my subject line being the 2025-2026 budget. So without having to go back and change the template right now, I can just do it directly in this screen here. And then I can change the template later if I'm going to keep sending this for others as well. So I'm changing my subject line here for the email that's going out to now tell my tenants it's for the 2026-2027 estimate of outgoings. Again, the rest of the details, who I'm sending this from, who the replies are being sent to. The letter itself that we are sending, probably a good opportunity to review just in case you hadn't updated it like I had there, that you've got the correct years showing in here. So if you haven't already updated your letter template, you can do it at this point as well. So this one's already got the 2026-2027 in there. There we go. All of those details are pulling through as I needed them. Okay. Once I'm happy with that, if I want to preview this before I send anything out to my tenants, I can download all of these. Okay. And this is what the budget letter to the tenants is going to look like. So it pulls through the details of the tenant, their address information. Again, it's that 2026-2027 estimate of outgoings. Gives them this letter on the first page here as the breakdown, but then it also gives them the breakdown, and again, depending on the settings that I selected previously, shows them what the annual budget is and what their portion of that is. Because I downloaded multiples, it then moves me down to the next lease. This is their letter, and this is their breakdown. Once I'm happy with that, if I want to now send those out, I can just say send email, and those are going to go out to all of my tenants with valid email addresses. If some of my tenants, I don't have an email address listed, I can select this option here to download all of these for the tenants who do not have an email address listed, and then I can send them separately through whatever method you're using at the moment. Okay. So that is wrapping up the session for today. Again, just for anybody who might not have already been logged in when we started the session, there is the option from our Rex Real Trust team to actually assist with entering these budgets for you. If you are interested in learning more about that, if you want to speak to a team member about that from the Rex Real Trust team, the little QR code that I'm displaying on the screen at the moment should take you to submitting your details, and somebody should get in contact with you soon to discuss the options for what they can offer around assisting with that. I'll leave that up for a little bit longer for anybody who might still be wanting to grab that. But otherwise, everybody else, if you're heading off now, thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't catch the entire session, it has been recorded and it will be uploaded into our knowledge base over the coming week. And again, we'll probably also include this QR code as well if you're interested in learning more about having our Rex Real Trust team assist you with entering those budgets in. All right. So thank you very much for your time, everybody. I won't end the session now, just in case anyone's still grabbing those details, but I will shut the session off in a minute or two. So thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to catching up with you all in the next one. Thank you. looks like most of our attendees are dropping off, so I'm going to close off the session. Anyone who's still in at the moment, thank you so much for your time today. And as I said, look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. Bye.